As it has been requested by His Excellency Ambassador Gonsalves, now we are going to have a second stop, and we are going to provide the opportunity to the delegation to refer to those issues that they are considered are relevant to be dealing with. Please, you have the floor, His Excellency.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I thank the delegations that have contributed thus far to the debate. In light of the many issues that have been raised, I will not revisit my earlier comments before the break regarding criminalization of certain sexual conduct and the like, or even the death penalty, except to say that St. Vincent and the Grenadines would encourage the Human Rights Committee to do some studies regarding the deterrent effect of the death penalty within small societies. We have read and we accept that the death penalty may not have a deterrent effect in the large societies in which it has been studied statistically. But within the context of small island states, within the context of a particular island that may have 1,000 people or 2,000 people, we question whether or not there would not be a deterrent effect within the confines of that particular state. So we would encourage some additional studies within the context of small island states where essentially everyone knows everyone, and it would be a different impact, these sorts of penalties. Regarding the Garifuna, I thank the representative of Honduras for his comments. The Garifuna, after being exiled from our country, ended up in Honduras, Guatemala, Belize, Nicaragua. So we are truly at this point a pan-regional indigenous people, and I thank him for that recognition. Regarding the establishment of an independent human rights body, as I indicated in our opening statement, the constitution that we attempted to put forward included provisions for such a body. Unfortunately, that constitution was rejected at a referendum. So the government has to go back to the drawing board, as it were, in dealing with an independent human rights body. We also hope to strengthen civil society. Civil society in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in the field of human rights, our record is a little spotty. It is not the most robust civil society, but we hope to create a more conducive environment for the growth of civil society in that regard as well. The delegate from South Africa, I'm grateful to him for raising the issue of racial discrimination against children. I have to state for the record that St. Vincent and the Grenadines categorically rejects that charge. And we've read it, and it was stated racial discrimination or other discrimination, economic or the like. Given our history, we take very seriously the charge of racial discrimination, and if it is going to be made, we would like it to be made in a more substantive manner than the manner in which it was made. The descendants of indigenous peoples in our country live in a very rural area, and that is the area essentially that they were deposited by their colonial masters. And to the extent that there is a difficulty in these children achieving or attaining certain things, it is a product of their ruralness, not a product of their race. And the fact that they live in rural areas will make their difficulties indistinguishable from that of other rural children living in other rural communities. And the government rejects the assertion or the implication that there is a racial component to any of that. There may be an economic or a rural component, but there's not a racial component. Similarly, in the same vein, we do have some difficulty with some of the data we've heard today regarding the food security of children. I'm not sure if the data is outdated or simply inaccurate, but the government would also take issue with some of that data. There is a school feeding program within our country that provides meals to all students attending schools. The Social Security safety net has been strengthened considerably The payment to the indigent and poor has been increased substantially. Other forms of assistance to the poor and to parents, the money given to indigent parents has also been increased, and the food security issue is being dealt with in a comprehensive and very caring manner. And we would encourage a revisit to our country to get more accurate data in that regard. Regarding measures being taken on teen pregnancy, I will refer back to my statement. The policy initiatives of the government to return mothers to school after having children is recognized as a regional best practice by the United Nations Population Fund. We provide for health care, for child support and the rest of it for children, and it's recognized as a best practice. We also, speaking of best practices, we welcome the offer from the government of Thailand, and we would be very grateful to share with you our own best practices and to both benefit from that sort of an exchange, and we're very grateful for the offer. Technical cooperation, we think, is essential, and we're very grateful to the states that have raised it. Look, small countries are in a difficult situation. We want to add our voice to the weight of international consensus on human rights issues. But each act in so doing brings with it reporting burdens. And so when we add our voice, we create a cost to ourselves, and then we face the charge of not being able to meet the reporting burden. So technical assistance is critical to states such as ours, because we want to add our voice, but we do need the technical assistance, and we welcome it in whatever form it comes. In that same vein, the questions, the St. Vincent and the Grenadines has to respond with some caution to the request for a standing invitation to special procedures. There are currently over 30 special procedures, and it would be a burden to our small country or with limited means to extend such a standing invitation. If there is a request, as it may arise, the government will consider that. But to issue a standing invitation would be another fiscal burden that we may be unable to bear at this particular time. I note that although there are 82 standing invitations, there is, and they're from a wide cross-section of the world, there is a bit of a regional bias in those countries that have currently issued standing invitations. We note, for example, that the entire EU has done it, all of the candidate countries to the EU have done it, and most of the other countries in Europe have done it, which results in roughly 54% of the 82 countries being from the continent of Europe. We would encourage, and noting also that no country from our sub-region, the CARICOM sub-region, has issued such a standing invitation, we would encourage the human rights body, being based in Europe and wanting no doubt to broaden this scope, to engage the rest of the world in sharing with us the benefits of the standing invitation, and also considering possibly extending assistance to those small countries that would issue standing invitations. It's not a question of not wanting to be open, it really is a question of the burdens involved. The issue of child pornography, there is no specific child porn statute, but child pornography is dealt with in our existing legislation. It's dealt with in our obscenity legislation, our child abuse legislation, our trafficking in children legislation. So it would be very difficult for child pornography to flourish, to succeed in any way in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, given our existing legislative framework. Female offenders are housed separately from the male population. The new jail, the new correctional facility that we discussed is for males. We currently have a very small female inmate population, but there is significant training happening with the prison facilities to ensure that their rights are respected under the respective the covenants involved. Excessive force of the police force is an issue. We continue to try to educate our police service to deal with this issue, and we are making some progress, though I would admit that it is a continuing issue to some degree, and there is some even recent examples of insensitivity regarding police excesses and the manner in which they're dealt with by the police, and those issues are a work in progress, as they are in many countries that have transnational crime and police forces. The government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela has been very helpful in our development efforts, and we thank them. Currently, Venezuela, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Portugal are involved in a project to provide a laptop computer to every single student in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we will be the first in the region, if not in the hemisphere, where every one of our students would have a laptop computer, and with all of the necessary benefits that that brings to our development effort. The government of the Bolivarian Republic has also helped us in a variety of other means, and we're grateful for their assistance in our developmental efforts. Regarding the criminal age of responsibility being set at 8, again, we have to explore the common law on this issue. The law says that if you are 8 and below, you will not, in any circumstance, be considered criminally responsible. But that does not mean that if you are 9, you will be criminally responsible. There is the space between 8 and 16, there is a judicial inquiry into the capacity of the child to understand right and wrong, and whether or not this child should be charged as a juvenile or not. There is no incidence of a 9-year-old being charged as an adult, and the common law has shaped this. I know that my colleague from St. Kitts and Nevis, who was before this council recently and is an attorney, has explained it fully, and we align ourselves with what was said by our brother from St. Kitts and Nevis in this regard. Regarding HIV/AIDS, St. Vincent and the Grenadines has recorded some successes. The rate of infection has stabilized, and those who have contracted the disease are now living longer. In fact, we are now faced with the problem of needing second-level drugs to assist those patients that have lived a certain number of years. So we would request those countries that manufacture and produce such drugs to consider under TRIPS and other mechanisms to make such drugs more available and affordable to these countries, countries such as ours. Mother-to-child transmission has been virtually eliminated, and there's clearly more work to be done, but we have made some progress in HIV/AIDS regard. Climate change. Climate change is a significant threat. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is just recovering from massive flash flooding, which came in the wake of a hurricane less than 6 months ago. And both of them are evidence of tremendous climate change. The hurricane came out of season. The original hurricane season would not have accommodated a hurricane coming in October. The hurricane season has been expanded. The hurricane came at that point, and the flooding has also come out of season. The flooding is coming in what is traditionally our dry season. Thousands of people were left homeless. Hundreds of homes were destroyed. Livelihoods, infrastructure. It is of calamitous effect to our developmental aspirations, to our health system, and to the rights of people. So it is a tremendous issue. We thank the government of Canada, the government of Australia, the United States of America, Venezuela and Cuba, and all of the countries that have come to our assistance in the wake of this very tragic event. But unfortunately, these events are being more and more frequent and more intense, and they have an incredible effect both on development and on the enjoyment of human rights and human security. There is a separate detention facility for juveniles. I note some of the questions that seem to suggest that juveniles are housed with the adult population. This is not correct. Juvenile offenders are housed essentially in a special holding area at the central police station, and they're not housed with the adult population. We probably should create a special dedicated facility outside of the police station, and this is an issue of cost, but I wanted to indicate to the council that juveniles are not housed with the adult population. The question of the Debtors Act and the criminal penalties involved in the Debtors Act. The Debtors Act was revised in 2008, and the main object of that was to commit a judgment debtor to prison for failure to obey an order of the court. So it's essentially a contempt of court provision. If the debtor is found to be able to pay but refuses to pay, there is a provision akin to a contempt of court provision in that regard. And if in countries such as ours, people migrate very quickly and very easily, and if there is a suspicion that the person is going to migrate to avoid a judgment, the person can also be held in that regard. But it is not a sort of a Dickinsonian commitment to prison for debtors. The issue of the Commonwealth Office raised by our sister from the Maldives, we're exploring that as a regional initiative. So the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States is investigating whether or not we as a group can join the Commonwealth Office. I think that I've dealt with most of the questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Very clear. You alone has been able to be puzzling on detailed basis for every question. I think that very few delegations did, as you are doing yourself alone. Congratulations for that. Now we are going to revert to the list of speakers